taking the high road or just doing the right thing, right? When no one's looking, that sort of sentiment can only serve us well in the long run.
Welcome to episode 1 of In Deep with Duke. This conversation is going to make you want to be a better person. I'm Duke Mosley, your host, and the mission of this podcast is to help you reach your highest potential and be the best version of yourself. I will share with you inspiring stories and interesting interviews from some of our most influential and interesting intuitive teammates so that you can understand what truly makes extraordinary people extraordinary and hopefully improve your life through their stories and experiences. Additionally, we will explore anything related to intuitive culture, development, and history. My guest today is Dave Rosa, our Executive Vice President and Chief Commercial Officer. As you listen to our conversation, pay close attention not only to what Dave says, but how he says it. It's going to be impossible not to notice his passion for what we do and his dedication to our mission and how much he truly cares about the people at Intuitive. This will be evident in the first few minutes. I was really inspired by a strong sense of duty, doing the right thing when no one's watching. So with that, I'd like to welcome Mr. Dave Rosa.
Duke, it's always good to be with you. I hope this is going to work well.
Me too. Thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate your time. Let's get right to it. First question is twofold, and this could be personal or professional, whatever comes to mind first for you. What are you most proud of? What's been your most significant accomplishment? And on the flip side of that coin, what's been your biggest challenge or failure, and what did you learn from that?
Yeah, so maybe personally, I think it's just my family. I know many would answer that. I have 4 kids and a wife of about 27, 28 years. And so I've got one out of school and graduated into the business world, 2 in college and 1 in high school. And so my sense is that they're all going to be productive members of society. And so I think that's our job as parents, right? Is to launch the next set of kids and contributors out there that will make the world a better place. And so I think they're on their way doing that. Professionally, probably the thing I'm most proud of is just stepping back is Intuitive, obviously, right? It's going over 23 years, building a company that I think is set to really, really impact more than we have already the world of surgery and changing outcomes for patients globally. That I don't know, makes it feel a little bit more like going to the dentist. No one's going to like it, but the outcomes are going to be pretty well known. Versus today, where there's a lot of surgery, you're kind of wondering whether or not you're going to wake up with cancer still in you, or some sort of complication that's going to have you be in a place you don't want to be. And I really think computer assistance, robotics, that world will be that change, and we're in the lead. And so super proud of that, clearly. On the flip side, the challenge, there's been a lot of personal challenges. Almost all of us have had those. I've had some health challenges with the kids for a couple of years that were pretty trying, but we got through those, thankfully. In the intuitive space, I mean, there are plenty, but the one that's the most recent that maybe a lot of people would resonate with is back in the day, in about 2012 and into 2013, there were a series of events that really impacted Intuitive. And so we had short sellers kind of really pointed at us. We had a product recall that you probably remember around the MCS. We had the FDA here with several directed audits and ultimately a warning letter. And so that resulted in a tremendous number of challenges for the company. And I'm proud of the way the company went through that. Right? None of us, I think, said, "Oh, we're done." We're done as Intuitive. It's like, hey, this is going to be some really rough waters. But the value that we are absolutely 100% committed to the value we bring. And we believe it, and we're going to get through this. And I'm reminded of the poem that Lonnie introduced to me about If by Kipling. And it just says, triumph and disaster are kind of both the same. And that was a time of disaster, if you will. And we got through that. And there were a million interactions with regulators and Wall Street reporters that we got through.
Yeah.
And the company came out the other side better for it, right? We built strength in a lot of areas we didn't have it before. And, if I think about me personally in there, Gary and others were huge parts of that. Maybe a mistake back in the day is trying to justify certain things. It turns out that sometimes the better way of navigating through that is to be silent. And so we are ones that want people to know what it is we do. We believe so deeply in our ethics, in our North Stars, and how we run the company that we want to tell people about it.
Yeah.
But it's too easy to take that set of words and just twist them up. And the media, the press, and others can just kind of put a bent on it where you go, that's not what I meant.
Yeah.
Or you put data. I was putting data about all these MDRs, these adverse events that the press were in a frenzy on. And it's just too complicated.
Yeah.
You cannot simplify it to an extent that people understand.
Sure.
And so you just have to kind of bite your tongue.
Yeah. That's easier said than done.
It is.
I think for all of us, but not that there's ever a good time for those things to happen, but I'm glad it happened early on. And so, like you said, I'm sure we learned a lot and we'll be better for it. And when those challenges happen in the future, maybe we're better apt at handling those than maybe some of our competitors who just haven't had those in this space yet. And
for the smaller ones, no question.
Yeah.
For the larger ones, they know how to navigate this too.
Yeah.
No question. In fact, right now there's a series going on out in the world by this international consortium of investigative journalists, and they have been putting together a series around medical devices, and they're going after companies. Medtronic was in their gun sights over the weekend, and so that. Medtronic responded with a press release that basically says patient safety is our number one thing. We're focused on it. We believe in it. And that's what they need to say.
Yeah.
So they know how to navigate.
That's all you can say. Yeah.
It's
all
pretty
right.
Interesting.
You mentioned family when you talked about something you're most proud of. In your role, obviously it requires a lot of time. You work in multiple time zones, multiple countries. How do you balance that? What do you do to keep family top priority, number one priority?
Yeah, it starts with a spouse who believes deeply in the mission as well, right? And is highly supportive and relatively independent. So for me personally, the way it works is I typically I'm not on 24/7. I try to do work when it's work time and family when it's family time. And really try to stay off email or conference calls. It's difficult with time zones.
Yeah.
But, for the most part, I try to stay committed to the family when we can, especially on weekends.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So more on that. So what is your routine for the first 90 minutes of your day, let's say during the week? So what time do you wake up? What does that first 90 minutes look like?
Yeah, for me, I'm up pretty early, 4:35. Usually start with a big cup of coffee and some time with my dog and just quiet time for there. And then exercise.
Okay.
And that takes me, and now these days we have a Chinese exchange student living with us too.
Okay.
And my son. And so about 6:30, they got to get out of bed and get ready for school. I'll take them to school because it's right close to here. And then I'm in the office typically by 7:30.
Got it. What kind of exercise do you do? Are you a runner, biker, weights?
A little bit of sort of weights and running, sort of the cardio side of things. It's not in shape like you, but it's enough to try to keep me young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. What about book? What's the best book you've read this year?
It's probably The Emperor's Malady. So it's a book about cancer.
Okay.
Actually, in terms of, and then I also enjoy novels. Sometimes I just need downtime,
Something different.
Yeah, something different. Yeah. So I have been reading a series by Vince Flynn, started with American Assassin.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard of that.
Yeah.
There's a couple guys reading that.
I think there are.
A couple gals reading that too.
I think Glenn turned me on to it, if I'm not mistaken.
That may be where I heard of it from him. Yeah. So what are the top 3 to 5 leadership principles that you've discovered and that you've executed day in and day out over the years that's helped contribute to your success? If you had to point to a few.
It is they're sort of written down in a way, right? And so I'm looking at a poster in my office talking about leadership expectations, and that's been formed over 23 years, right? It wasn't just sort of one day, let's just write some things down. It's things that matter to the company. And I sit on the board of a couple of other companies, small startups, and realize that one of the things that I've had as an incredible blessing about Intuitive is my time with Lonnie. So Lonnie Smith, right? And he started as CEO in 1997, I think it was, and was here for about 13 years as CEO and still here as chairman. And so he is an extraordinary business person and person, both. And so just to watch, right? Watch and learn from him. And that's where I think most of my business principles and business acumen have come from, to be honest. So anyway, his penmanship or his authorship is all over that, and it is something that I try to follow. So leading by example is one of the things I really try to do. So I'm willing to roll up my sleeves, dig in, understand problems, try to sit side by side in the day with engineers or with manufacturing people or with regulators, whatever it is, and try to solve the problem rather than just say, go solve the problem. And so that's something that I've always held to be one of a tenet of mine, that if I'm going to ask someone to do it, I better be willing to do it myself and able in many ways to do it myself. The other thing that, yes, 3 to 5 might take a while, but the other thing for me that is something that I personally care about a lot is just taking the high road. It is a long journey and things have a way of kind of circling back around. And so taking the high road or just doing the right thing, right, when no one's looking, that sort of sentiment can only serve us well in the long run. It may be painful in the moment. We may lose a deal, right, because of some reason. We may interrupt a relationship. We may go backwards in trying to gain to a goal because what we believe we're doing the right thing. But in the long run, there's no question. It's true for family. It's true for life. It's definitely true for business.
It is. I remember you telling a story. I think it was at the Worldwide a year back, maybe a couple years back. You were talking to Lonnie, and you were telling a story about where you were walking with him outside of work, and there was a piece of trash in the ground. And he stopped, and he picked up the piece of trash. That, to me, it's just doing the right thing when it's time to do the right thing. And so, from that day on, you can't walk past a piece of trash and think, the right thing to do.
It's a great
small
example,
stuff like that
right?
that I think impacts people. It impacted me just hearing that small piece of story, and I thought, man, a guy that could easily walk past that with a million more things to do, in that scenario just took the 2 seconds to do the right thing.
It's your business, it's your house, it's your neighborhood. You're part of that community.
I think it inspires people. People hear those types of stories and those types of things, and they want to emulate that. And they say, I'm going to do that. And it's hard not to do that when you hear stories about people like that who do the right thing and at the right time when no one's watching.
One time I was on the phone, I was having a conversation. I like to walk when I'm on the phone. And so I was outside and I was just kind of not paying attention, and there was a piece of trash and I just picked it up and threw it in there. And I got off the phone and walked inside, and somebody came in after me and said, hey, I just saw you pick that up. Didn't even see that, but didn't know who they were. And just said thank you, And so, those little things.
It impacts people. And I can tell you the leadership expectations, we certainly adhere to it in the business school. It's something we talk about quite frequently.
Good.
And I've been on a VIP visit with a customer, and I was surprised at how many surgeons and executives pointed those out and said, hey, that's interesting. You guys have those leadership expectations. I've seen them posted in multiple buildings now. Didn't realize you guys were that kind of company. Not that they were really surprised, but I think they were moved at seeing those things, and that we had taken the time, someone had taken the time to write those down, and it's not something that we just talk about, it's something that we live. And they found that very interesting. So I thought that was pretty neat.
Duke, I agree with that. And you said that right on. You got to live it, right? It doesn't. You can write anything you want up there, and it doesn't matter unless we're living it. And the people that we put into leadership positions, the people that we're surrounding ourselves with, need to be living it too,
Yeah.
right?
And I hope that that helped them recognize and connect the dots that when they deal with our people on a daily basis, that they're seeing those things that we have posted and that we are living that. And I think that's what drew them to the poster is kind of connecting those dots. And you know what? I can see that. My CSRs and my CSMs and my ASMs and my my ASDs, they're living it.
Yeah.
And so I think that was it. They kind of connected the dots for them. So
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
You know, there's a lot of different ways in which people think about culture of a company, and for me, that's one of the primary pillars of the culture of this company.
Yeah.
Are those leadership expectations and the individual expectations, and so those two pieces. You know, if we live that, sort of defines that what our culture is, and our culture as Intuitive, I think, it is the most valuable asset that we have in many ways. You know, it's the people who make up that culture, but what we expect of each other and what customers should expect of us, what patients should expect of us. To me, that is our competitive edge. You know, our products are great.
Yeah.
Our pricing can be what it is, but it is that piece of the puzzle that I think will take us a long ways into the future. Or I know it will.
Agreed. So there's a lot of folks listening that have their teams, a lot of CSRs that are trying to motivate their surgeons. What do you do to motivate your team? How do you keep your team around you motivated?
Me personally, I'm a super mission-driven sort of person. You know, some people can be driven by finances. Some people can be driven by other means. But for me personally, it's about the mission. And so the people around me, I think, see that and believe that too, right? And it's actually, I think, one of the most powerful things that we have at the company is we work in the medical field.
Yeah.
And so we're impacting people that are in a rough time that need care, right?
Sure.
And so if you need to stay motivated, you know, and then to me, it's always circling back.
So it goes back to that leading by example. And
in some ways, and saying and reminding people because all of us there was hard times, there's long days, there's surgeons that say no 15 times. There are cases that don't go great. There are people who drop out of a training pathway and stall right? I think salespeople, almost more than anyone else in the company, see no almost more than anyone, you know, because they're dealing with customers and trying to influence and build belief systems. And it's different than internally when you have more control, if you will, over your destiny.
Yeah.
You know?
You know, you see, working with surgeons all day and sometimes in hospitals, you see people that I wouldn't say they're desensitized, but they're just, sometimes you get the sense that they're going through the motions. And I think whether it's with a leader or whether it's with a surgeon, when someone has that motivation, they keep that mission in mind, and that's what keeps them going. I think that's motivating to other people. When you see a surgeon that treats that patient like it's his own family member rather than just someone on the table, and we see both ends of that. You're always going to see both ends of that, and I think that's inspiring and motivating to people in the field when you have one of those surgeons that really goes the extra mile, takes the extra time to explain something to a patient, and they do the right thing because hey, this could be my family member, and so that's always motivating when you're in the OR or when you're working with a leader. When they live that, I think that's very motivating. And like you said, if that doesn't motivate you, you're probably in the wrong place.
I think so. You know, I couldn't agree more with that. So all of us have been in the OR a bazillion times, and so in there, I remember you can contrast ones where patients will come in and nurses and doctors are saying very inappropriate things, and this is kind of a long time ago, particularly in Europe. You're going, this is like somebody who is in your
How is this happening?
How is this? Versus ones that won't even let you in the room until they're covered up and everything. You know, and it's just that respect for the privacy and that person. And how would you want to be treated?
It's motivating, yeah.
It is motivating because people are doing the right thing. You know, but you know, for me, Duke, on the motivation, it's hard, right? Our character, capacity, energy, experience.
Yep.
That sort of raw characteristics other than experience of someone. So you got to hire the right person in order to how, you know, they got to be self-led, right values, the right ability and willingness and energy to work the way we expect to work in Intuitive. You know,
I think that's why the frontline manager role is so important, because those are values that you really can't coach or teach. You have to hire for those. And so we talk about a lot in business school, and I think those values are there for a reason, and we've got to bring people on, like you said, to keep the culture and maybe protect the culture, grow the culture, people with those values. So when you're bringing somebody on board, and you're faced with two equal candidates, right? How do you decide which one gets the nod? Or if two folks are going for a promotion maybe, and a lot of things are equal, what sets one above the other for you?
Yeah, that is being an engineer and sort of training, and the way I think it's sort of I have a lot of first principles thinking, meaning, what problem are we trying to solve, or what's the why behind something, right? And so for me, it's probably mostly about that.
Okay.
Like as I dig into the interview,
interesting.
Why is it that you're interviewing for the job, right?
Yeah.
And it's not. Sometimes it's very mission driven. Sometimes it's, hey, I'm my career and this is where I am at, and so that for me is it's subtle, and it's it may be more of a gut thing than it is I could just write down a piece of paper and say this is the right interaction. Yeah. The other piece too, depending on who you're hiring for, you have more of an influence as you get higher in leadership, but everybody has an influence. Is whether or not they are aligned with the sort of that CCE,
Yeah.
and they're never exactly equal.
Yeah.
Right. Diversity and inclusion, another piece of the puzzle, right?
Yeah.
As you look through a pool of candidates, and you're making sure that the bench you're interviewing has the right makeup, and so. But for me, it comes down to probably that character piece the most in my belief system about whether or not they have high character, and that character will fit within our company.
So, the jungle gym analogy is something that we've heard a lot over the last couple of years, and a lot of folks have taken that to heart. What jungle gym roles have you taken, and how has that impacted your personal development, professional development over the years at Intuitive?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I was hired here to design part of the system. And the part of the system I was working on was kind of the setup joints for the most part. That was my part. And so that was what was most sort of confusing and needing help with in surgery. And so because I was designing, I kind of, immediately was side by side with surgeons in the lab, trying to figure out how do you set up these arms on the patient. And so I really took a liking to surgery itself. I like to get my hands on whatever it was we were working on, a cadaver or something else at the time. And so got, kind of out of design and into the application of Da Vinci. And so that was a little bit of a jungle gym move. We didn't have clinical engineers at the time. It was sort of just kind of a pseudo applications engineer.
Yeah.
And so that moved me into surgery and starting to interact deeply with surgeons. What do they need? How do they think about it? And because I was an engineer, I was good at translating customer needs to the engineers. Hey, you built this thing, it doesn't work. Here's what it needs to do, that kind of thing. And so then I was asked to move over into marketing as kind of the product marketer, helping to identify what it is we need out in the world. We had a Da Vinci system, but we had 2 instruments, and so it was sort of officially now taking what was being asked for by surgeons, translating it to engineers, and then back in the day, trying to write manuals and things about how do you use Da Vinci. And so I did that for a little while as kind of a product marketing person, and then moved, if I remember right, this is in the days when NOTES, natural orifice transluminal endoscopic surgery, was becoming sort of vogue. It was back in about 2005.
Okay.
And this was taking a flexible endoscope, putting it down your esophagus, into your stomach, going out the stomach and taking your gallbladder out. That was sort of the big idea back in the day. And we were like, we think robotics can matter. And one of the founders had left the company and started a different one. And we were maybe going to work with them, but then decided to do one on our own. And I was asked to kind of lead the group. So we had a small group of engineers and started our journey on NOTES in the day that had then we go, this is too hard, and I don't think we want to go through people's stomach to gallbladder out. So it sort of backed up and became SP. That was the genesis of how we started SP. And so I led advanced product development, if you will, for a while. And during that tenure is when Ion sort of became birthed too. Okay. And so then some things happened in the company. I was asked to retake on marketing, if you will, in a more holistic sense, all of marketing, though primarily product marketing in the day, and ran that for a little while. And then I was asked to take on regulatory, partly because I was complaining about it so much. we had a product called Single Site, if you remember, and we still do actually today. And that was, again, formed under sort of my watch. And we had done all the engineering, given it to the FDA, and, sort of normal course, like how hard can this be? We ended up having it denied to us, called an NSE. And you go, I got this letter that surprised all of us. And I was really pissed off because we shouldn't have been surprised. It's okay that they said no, but we should have never been surprised by that. And it turned out the only thing they wanted to change was some labeling. But because we had a poor relationship, in my opinion, we could have done better. And so I made that known, hey, we need to do better here. And Gary asked me to say, okay, why don't you take it? Why don't you do better then? And so I said yes, in quality and regulatory as the chief scientific officer at the time. And so did that for a number of years. And that was, I didn't know anything about regulatory or quality or anything else. And so, but I was surrounded by a really strong team, and they knew it. And so it's about kind of leadership and putting in different leadership expectations and kind of rebuilding the group, that sort of thing. And then the transition to this current role, which was, again, a big jump, right, into the chief commercial officer. So out of sort of the scientific operations side and into the commercial business, which was very different from the rhythm of the group and how the interactions happen, but it's the exact same value proposition. It's not hard to sell what we do, because I believe in it so deeply. And, got to know Henry and Damien and other leaders, and since that time, as you know, have built a more global organization, and it's been a really remarkable journey. I'm proud of the team and proud of the performance all of you have put together. It's been a wonderful 4 years.
Yeah. I don't think I could think of a more jungle gym approach to take. And I'm sure all the roles have built on previous roles, but I think before we came on, you and I were talking about the other opportunity when you move into a new role to be able to grow that role and make that role better or something that it wasn't. And I think that helps the company out as the next person comes in and takes on that role. When someone vacates a role, then they make it a little better. They have a different set of eyes. And so I think that, from a company perspective, when you have people moving into different roles in different areas, it's that diversity has got to be good for the entire company when people take on different challenges and kind of make that role a little bit better or grow it a little bit, and then they move to something else and someone else moves in there. So
I agree with that 100%. And in fact, I think we ought to be careful too that I am really a believer in the jungle gym analogy, and so it's the fact that it's not a ladder, right? It's not just the next role in sort of your, you can go all over the company. Yourself have made
it's been exciting,
a good jungle gym move, but that we also bring in external talent too when appropriate, right? That we don't completely drink our own Kool-Aid. We listen because there are good ideas out there, and there are others that will come in with different ways of doing things that will help us, make us better.
I was just in Omega training a couple weeks back, and there were some folks that were new that came in from other IT companies, and they had a lot to offer. So it was good. I think we do a really good job of having balance with, we've got a great culture, but we bring in just the right amount of folks from the outside that are going to add to that and make it a little bit better. So we maintain a great culture, but we also grow it when we bring on those other people. I think we do a really good job of that balance.
Me too. Yeah. I don't know if there's.
I don't know what the right balance is.
But 80-20.
It feels right.
Yeah, but it feels. It feels about right. And sometimes it's what generally what the good thing is for us. I think is our leadership bench strength is really strong. Where a lot of times where it's not so much in our side in the commercial org, but sometimes when you're building a new function where the capability just generally, or the knowledge just generally doesn't exist in the organization. You know, if it's about reimbursement and there's a specialist that needs to come in, like a Matt Carroll's team,
We'll get him.
It's hard. Yeah, we'll go get them, right?
Yeah.
It happens a lot in the operations. If you want to bring somebody in for a new type of IT or software or something, and we just don't have it, we have to bring them in, machine learning or AI, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting. It varies around the company.
So, you know, you've taken on a lot of new challenges, a lot of new roles. What do you do today to keep developing yourself as a leader? You know, I know that there's some things that you read, and obviously you're challenged in these new roles, but are there some things that you do for your own professional, personal development on a daily, weekly, monthly basis?
Yeah, I do read. You know, that's probably one of the primary things, just to keep myself tested. And another thing that I've been learning more over the last couple of years, I think I've always known this, but it's become more relevant, is I don't know it all, you know. And the company, Gary and I talk about this too, actually. Both he and I have grown up in this company for the most part. You know, vast majority of our business world and acumen and learning comes from Intuit over the last 23 years. And so have we learned a ton? Yes. But there are a lot of other people out there who have experienced things and gone through things and navigated them really exceptionally well, where we can learn from them. And so where and how do you find those kinds of folks, you know?
Yeah.
I sit on a couple of boards. I can learn from the other people on the board. We have our own board that has a wide variety of experiences. So reading is one thing. It kind of sets principles and ways to think. Interacting with people who have done this before, especially as we enter what I sort of think is a new phase for Intuitive. You know, we're continuing to grow. We're at 5,000 people today. If everything goes as planned, we'll be at 15,000 people several years from now. Yeah. And just there are companies that have seen that sort of exceptional growth and built multinational companies with processes that can navigate 5 to 15,000 people that are in industries that are highly competitive. You know, ours is not competitive against robots. It is against laparoscopy and open surgery. But Medtronic, Verb Surgical, Transiteris, whomever, will be in force in the next couple of years. So how do we navigate that? What does it mean? What kinds of pressures will it put on the company that are different than today? You can read a book about it. You can assume, well, it'll put pricing, you know, try to take our people and, you know, that sort of thing. What does it really mean? How do we have to change as a company? So I think, you know, books and people are the two primary pieces.
I think that's something that we could, for the folks listening, that's probably something we could all do a better job of is reaching out to folks that maybe do what we do in other companies, just to kind of form those relationships and kind of gain what are they doing differently, what are they doing good. Not to steal ideas, but just to have those relationships to kind of keep our eyes wide open on what's going on outside and even in other industries. I've seen some folks that we brought on board from completely different industries that have been very successful and they've got great ideas. So I think that's something we could probably all do a better job of, is not only the reading part, but you know, those connections and reaching out and developing relationships with folks maybe outside of our business that we wouldn't normally.
Mentors are important.
Or mentors.
They're mentors or however you want to think about it. But coaching you in, you know, in life skills or in leadership skills or in business things that you think are critical to the company. I mean, to me, we have a big network. If we ask each other, hey, I'd like help in the following area. Do you know anyone? Right?
Yeah.
You've got a big network. So what does that look like? Right?
Yeah. When you look at the new generation or the next generation of leaders that are coming on board, what are the keys to developing those folks? I mean, we all have, you know, you see different types of people, and we have great diversity and people from different backgrounds and different generations. Do you think there are some keys to success in developing that next wave or that next, you know, platform of leaders that come through? Are there things that we can do that to develop those folks that are different than what we're doing now?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Duke. It's funny. It's one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about lately because in particular, I've noticed. So my oldest daughter is 23, and she has started a new job in Austin as a computer software person. And, you know, I watch what is important to her and how she interacts with people and how she thinks about life. And to me, there are fundamental leadership skills that don't change. The things that we talked about, the leadership expectations. I think all of those hold true regardless of if you're 70 years old or if you're 23 years old and starting your career. But the way in which I have to talk to her and corporate social responsibility and things like that, really important to her. And so one of the things I've been thinking about is, the way in which I interact with people and the way and what's important to me and the how I work, what we were talking about before, may not be the same for the younger generation, the younger leadership. And so I think the principles are there. How we communicate those, I think, are different. And that's the thing that I'm working on. I'm just kind of struggling with actually a little bit is how do things like that get communicated to a generation that I think just looks at work differently than we used to. It's not wrong, it's just different.
And it's up to us. It's our responsibility to kind of tailor that to them rather than them picking up the way we do. And I think that can be a challenge for many of us is you get kind of set in your ways and you're used to communicating in a certain way or going through a certain process, and you just have different people that come from different backgrounds and different generations, and it's on us. The onus is on us as leaders to change the way we communicate that will motivate them or compel them to do something.
I could, perfectly said, Duke. And I just see it in my daughter and just watching what's going on with her. And I see it and I sort of apply that to the younger generation it's at our company or any company out there. And it's just different.
On the flip side of that, what's the one behavior or trait that you've seen derail leaders' careers?
A personal self-interest, meaning you're putting yourself ahead of the company. And so the mission of Intuitive is the number one thing for all of us here. That ought to be what is our North Star. And I have seen it. I have seen where leaders will put themselves ahead of the mission for the next role, to get a perk that they think they deserve. It may not be obvious, but it starts to infiltrate the way in which they interact with people. And so we were talking about Lonnie before and just the impact he's had on the company, on me. If I had to think of just one thing that summed him up, it's that he was a leader who put the company's interest ahead of his own every single time. Every time. I just have never seen anything like it. And I've been here a long time. This is what I tell people, right? I have had a lot of Kool-Aid from Intuitive, and I think our culture is super strong, and I like it, and I like to work here and what it is we've built. It doesn't mean it's the right for every company. It doesn't mean it's the best out there, but it really works well for us. And we have to work, we've not always been perfect at it, and we've tried to change things where we can. Across the street from Intuitive here in Sunnyvale, there's an older building that was from TI, from Texas Instruments. And so I think it was Texas Instrument. And it's 3 levels, kind of a big glass building. And it was a building that we were potentially going to lease. And the way it was constructed was first level working, second level working, third level executive suites, card key access, very nice offices. And I was going, that's insane to me. Just that would exist at a company. And not just have, as flat as you can an organization, a transparent organization. Everybody gets the same thing. You don't need this special office. It drives me crazy.
That's interesting.
And so in Lonnie, and Gary's the same way, he would never do that. Ever, it would because it absolutely is not in keeping with the mission of the company. It's a waste of money. It's it's starting to put a political bent into the leadership and the culture of the company. It's crazy. It's funny. The other day, I have a niece who's just about to graduate as a biomedical engineer. She has received an offer from Edwards to go, and which she's really into heart valves. So great, very proud of her. It's interesting, though. She had sent me a picture, and she goes, "Look where they put me up." And so Edwards had flown her down. Is just a young, not a graduated engineer. Put her up in this really nice hotel on the beach, probably $400 or $500 a night. Not having to room with anybody. It was just like the first in her career, and she was so thrilled about that, and I was happy for her. But the first thing I thought about was, is that in the best interest of the shareholders? Right? It's like, well, maybe they're trying to recruit her and that sort of thing, and so you're trying to put those little perks on it. But I really started thinking about, that's a lot of money to spend for, and that's shareholder money. Could it be better spent elsewhere? So it's just one of those things that I'm always testing.
Yeah. And what kind of precedence does that set, or what's going to be her expectation as someone that's young and new that hasn't experienced that yet? Once she does get the job, or when she gets the job, what next? What kind of hotels am I going to stay in when I travel? I mean, it seems small and nitpicky, but it's definitely something to think about.
It is something to think about. Yeah, it is small and nitpicky, but it's just interesting. I was like, just because we're not perfect, but I really do think Intuitive does a great job on that part of it.
Yeah.
The transparency of the culture and the willingness for leadership or anyone to talk to anyone in the company and be open about what it is we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I'm really, again, kind of first principles. I want to know why. Why are we doing something? Why are we making a decision? Why are we trying to go a certain direction? And if I know that and believe it, well, I'm all in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I want to know why.
Last question.
Sure.
What is the one question that you've been asking yourself lately? Or what's keeping you up at night?
What's keeping me up at night?
Yeah.
Probably, it's sort of weaved throughout this whole thing. Today, we're 5,000 people. We have 8 direct geographies, I think, and more to come over the years. We work in 60 plus different countries. And so what I worry about the most is how do we retain our culture, both in the face of very strong growth in numbers and growth geographically. And I worry, that's what keeps me up, is this culture, this whole conversation, right?
Yep.
It's actually, I think, part of the reason you're doing this is
Yeah.
how do you impart these belief systems into the organization differently than we have in the past, and so that it can scale. But the leaders that we hire, and for me personally, that I'm putting into geographies, Germany, France, Asia, wherever we are, India, you, Gary, Sal, whomever, Miriam, we can't be there every day.
Yeah.
We can't have the hallway conversations that we enjoy here. And so that's another thing that's been maybe one of the harder things for me is I'm a very much a personal interaction kind of person.
Face to face.
I don't write a lot of emails. I'd rather face to face or talk on the phone. And so multiple time zones, it's harder for me to do that. And so I've had to resort to kind of different ways to interact and communicate and to impart culture, if you will. And so, but anyway, those global leaders, are they the right people? I believe they are deeply, but making sure we hire the right people, because they will be the ambassador of our culture, not me.
Yeah.
Right? They are going to be the ones that have to impart it down in there.
It's a big responsibility. I think we all take it very seriously.
Yeah.
Who are we bringing on? What kind of values do they have?
Yeah.
What's the right balance of people outside versus people being promoted from within? And so I think we all share some of that responsibility. And I think that's that's probably what keeps us all up at night. Are we bringing the right folks on? Are we making the right decisions? But I'm glad that's top of mind for everybody. It makes me comfortable, and it's a huge decision.
It
big
is.
decision.
It is. Of course, strategy of the company is important. Products of the company, it's important, right? Those things are critical. Are we being fiscally responsible? Yes, and actually believe deeply they're critical. I really feel good about them. Yeah. But we talk about it, right? The thing that will derail this company more quickly than anything else is whether our culture becomes one that is just less effective, period. We're slowing down, or we're infighting, or we become political, and there's an extraordinary opportunity in front of us, right? Computer-assisted surgery is only getting bigger. Gary has said this before. The only question is who's going to get the opportunity, right? Intuitive, we're in the lead position. It's not our birthright. Medtronic's coming, Verb's coming, all these others, right? They're going to be formidable competitors. They're smart. They're well-funded. And so if we give them an opportunity to beat us, I believe this. It's not because we don't have the right strategy. It's not because we don't have the right products. It's because we have screwed up our culture and have given them the opportunity to beat us.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's going to be the difference maker.
Yeah.
Like you said, everybody's got smart people, great products, but it's that culture that really can set one above the other two.
I believe that. Man, I 100,000% believe that. And
That's a great perspective. So something to keep top of mind for sure.
Yeah. The thing I'm I'm really, really proud of the teams over the last 4 or 5 years is how often now that I hear from customers about the value that Intuitive brings. There's clinical value, but there's also relationship value. The value that you've had with your customers. I just got a great letter about one of our reps, Joe Tuttle, and written by a surgeon. It's remarkable, and I'm
You never
proud
get
of
too
that.
many of those.
No,
Yeah.
no, you don't, and to me, that's a huge piece of the puzzle,
Yeah.
for our competitive advantage.
For someone to take the time to sit down and write a letter and send it, I mean, that means a lot.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Well, Dave, that's our time. Thank you. I appreciate your time, your candor, and your commitment to our mission. Thanks again. Have a great rest of the
My
week.
pleasure, dude.
All right.
You too.